I'm gonna, you know, say this in the nicest way possible. A lot of my inspiration for my videos comes from actual life happenings. And as soon as it happens, I'm like, oh, let me get on the camera and start talking. So today's topic is based on the experience that I had this morning with someone who, is just constantly in a very self-deprecating state. The way that they speak about themselves, a lot of times is very negative, and I'm always having to say, like, don't say that, rewire it, reword it. I'm totally aware of how people are based on their birth chart and their alignment. And yes, you come here with a certain type of behavior and a certain storyline that will have to play out, but the awareness of self is to also understand, how can I utilize this behavior to my advantage? How can I learn how to kind of tone it down to become a better version of myself, to tap into the light side? And and I fully understand why I am in certain people's lives. I want people to become aware of everything that they are doing, how they can, use it to their advantage, navigate through this experience in a better way. No, you cannot control every outside circumstance, but you can control how you react to certain things. You can control, like, you know, do I want to get angry or upset at something that I kind of already know, or do I want to just kind of be like, whatever? I made a tweet this morning saying that even stress is the underlying factor to a lot of things. And so when you start to kind of turn your mindset into something negative, it can lead to a whole bunch of stuff. Being around a person who's always complaining, being around a person who's always doing something that you're just like, oh my gosh, it makes you want to like get away from them. Your relationships start to kind of fizzle out because you're not aware of the behaviors and what you are doing that is causing that. It's a domino effect for everything. Everything is connected. So if you are a person who is constantly in that mindset, with this person, talking to me and then saying things like, well, I just want to, have friends, or I just want to hang out with people, or I just want to whatever, but not realizing that what they are doing is the reason why certain people don't want to be around them, that nobody wants to hear that. Nobody wants, not even in a joking way. I know sometimes people use, uh, you know, I say like even dark humor or even this self-deprecating talk as a way to cope. Joking about things. I myself can make light of a dark situation, having optimism about things or making light of something, but also understanding that is not to like cut my own self down. Had a conversation this morning with somebody else, like joking about when you don't feel your best, when you don't look your best, as a woman, if you're feeling like bloated, or even as a man, you feeling like my body isn't where it wants to be. Like, instead of saying, I'm so fat, I'm so this, I'm so that, they were like, I'm just gonna like wear a big sweater or a big jacket. There's a difference between like knowing how you feel and how you like react to how you feel. So just wanted to kind of touch on this because, it's been a little frustrating, not gonna lie. Constantly having to say, Don't say it like that, reword it like this." Because although, I've mentioned many times, like, I don't believe in the idea of just like speak something and it'll come true, but I do feel like the more that you remain in a state of negativity, like everything around you will look negative and feel negative, and you'll just never see the brighter side of things. And then of course, looking at placements in the birth chart, I'm fully aware of how people can be, and so I just wanted to touch on this. If you are somebody who has these placements or know somebody who even talks like this, has their own, because you maybe you yourself study astrology and kind of see this in a chart, let me know your experience, if you have experience being around people like that, and then how do you kind of deal with that? How do you help them in a sense? Because it gets to a point to where you're like, all right, like, you're not gonna keep talking like this. You're like, we're done, okay? And I understand, like I said, how and why I am in people's lives. People who are operating in emotions 24/7 tend to be the people who I have to interact with and deal with on a regular basis, because my own alignment is more logical. So, and I tell people this all the time with relationships, romantic, platonic, family, whatever. a lot of times you are the opposite of that person because you're there to teach them the opposite of what they are doing. You're always operating in heavy emotions. You need somebody around you who is more logical to help you tap out of that and be like, hey, but also vice versa. If you're a highly emotional person and you're around a lot of logical people, you're there to help them kind of tap into emotion. So there is a balance between the two. But if you are somebody or know somebody who has like Saturn in the first house or conjunct their ascendant, it can give them a very harsh, like self-judgment, a lot of insecurity, or kind of how they present themselves to the world. Internally, their inner voice can be very critical, very like, I'm not good enough, because it kind of puts this, I'm gonna say like a depressive mindset as a Saturnian fully aware, okay? Saturnian energy can be a little bit more pessimistic. Aquarius, Capricorn. I feel like more Capricorn just because it is a feminine sign and again, operating more on emotions. But having Saturnian energy, very cold, very dry. If you have like maybe Mercury in a hard aspect to your Saturn, of course, Mercury is the mind. If it's square or if it's in opposition, Mercury is the way that you think. Saturn is restriction or fear. So putting those two energies together, your mind can be very negative. I don't know any other way to say that. The combination, of course, can, bring that self-talk to a more of a negative mindset, or the mental filter that you have is focusing more on the flaws, like what's wrong with you. Um, or having Mercury in Aquarius, Mercury in Capricorn, that can be something that's just kind of like how you think or how you talk. And of course, like I said, it's the aspects it's making. Squares and oppositions don't always mean something bad, but they present more challenges to people. I have seen this next one, Chiron in the first house. I know, a child with Chiron in the first house, and the way that kind of she speaks about herself and how she is with herself. That is something to remember. First house is the house of your physical body or yourself. Aries, your head. Um, or if Chiron, sorry, if is aspecting Mercury too. Chiron is the wound. And the first house, and if it's connected to Mercury, definitely wounds around your self-identity. How do you see yourself? How do you view yourself? Do you view yourself, your actual physical body, as a certain way? I have a client with Chiron in the first house who ended up becoming a personal trainer because of how she viewed herself. How she viewed her body. Chiron is also the wounds that we experience, but can also like teach other people. So if you have that Mercury Chiron connection, that can be, people who either have like some kind of like internalize shame, or they minimize themselves. They, kind of view themselves as small, not as big. No one ever sees me. No one ever like pays attention to me. Those kind of things too. Virgo moon, a Capricorn moon. I definitely have seen this. Virgo is already, very critical of self, critical of people, critical of things. Virgo risings, I've seen that too, but the moon is your emotions. I've definitely seen this with Capricorn moon. I have a friend who's a Capricorn moon, and like now that I know the placements, my sister and I, every time we would have conversations, it was a lot of joking, like negativity. And at first we would laugh about it and joke about it, and we're like, oh, you're so negative all the time. But now, like looking back, I'm like, I don't think they like really. I'm having like an epiphany moment now that I understand that they're Capricorn moon. Like the negativity is there, the perfectionism with Capricorn. They're always trying to find like what's wrong. And then Capricorn moon, I mean, I'm sorry, with Virgo. And then with Capricorn moons, they can be, like, because Capricorn is about status, or it rules over the 10th house of status and reputation. Maybe they constantly feel like they have to earn, because it's about work. Earning love or earning approval can also, of course, lead to very self-critical patterns in people. Um, and it's a little, like I said, it's frustrating, but that's how people are born and that's how they incarnate here. So being aware of what you're saying and how you're saying it and who you're saying it around, and also if you are a person who is like that, and Capricorn is associated with like pessimism. Sagittarius is known for optimism. There can be like delusional. They're so optimistic about everything. And so when you're around people who have that, and it could turn them off, because they're not like that. Um, uh, Fortunately for this person, they are a Cap moon with a Sag rising, so it's not too bad. But for some people, it can get so depressive the way that they speak and the way that they talk. Especially, like I said, the sixth house. The sixth house is Virgo. If you have Virgo placements there, if you have Saturn there too, this person that I interacted with this morning does have Saturn in the sixth house. And so that can be something too. Now, of course, whatever, it also can depend on what sign Saturn is in, what aspects is that Saturn making. But overall, you can see, is this person, um, you know, positive? No. But they can be people who are have a lot of anxiety. Virgo is dealing with a lot of anxiety. It can deal with a lot of depression. And of course, because if you have a lot of Virgo in you, can again be very self-critical. They speak about themselves very critical. I also had here people who have like a harsh aspect to their sun, because the sun is the soul, the confidence, the personality, and their harsh aspects to their Saturn, their Pluto, and their Neptune. Um, it's their, it's your core identity. If you have a negative aspect to your sun, it can give you like a lack of self-confidence. I have seen that, like the North Node conjunct the sun, because the North Node or Rahu in Vedic astrology can be smoke and illusions, and the mirror. Same thing with having Neptune. Same thing, with having a Pisces sun. Neptune is Piscean energy. Now, obviously, it's not all Pisces suns, but when the sun is not in fire or air, aside from Aquarius, it tends to be, a little bit more not as confident, because the sun naturally rules over Leo, which is a fire sign. It's in its natural state, natural element. But when it's not, then of course it kind of gives that little bit of like, I'm not as confident. Um, I just wanted to, Saturnian energy, Saturn, Pluto. Pluto is a transformation too, but it can really suppress the confidence in people. And again, I'm fully aware as an astrologer of why people are the way they are, but the point now with the knowledge is to, okay, what do we do with that? Okay, what do we do with that? Now you can tell people all day things, but it's up to them to make that change. And really like sit back and think like, what have I been saying this whole time? Why am I like this? Have I been turning people off? Is it everyone else or is it me? Now, we can play the what ifs all day, but I just wanted to bring awareness to this because I've been having to deal with this for many years, and just constantly trying to rewire their brain. But like I said, it gets to a point. It gets to a point where we have to really assess how we are. I always tell people, you're not wrong. You didn't like, when you're born, like it wasn't like, oh, your birth chart's wrong or it's bad or whatever. You just become aware of the patterns and aware of the patterns and what you are doing, what you are saying, how you are acting, and how do you utilize that? What do you do with that information? Like I said, I can't tell somebody they're right or wrong about how they are. It's everything is perspective. I'm never going to tell a client you're wrong for being like this. You didn't choose this. You didn't choose. Like, if I could be less impatient, I would. I don't like being frustrated by like little things, but that's just what it is, and I've become aware and okay, because I can get easily agitated. What do I do with that? I don't take it out on people. I just isolate, just like Aquarians do. They move about on their own. That's just what it is. Some people, that's how they utilize their energy. It's like instead of taking that on other people, I go into my car or my room, and then I just sit in there for 30 minutes and then I come out and everything's good, you know? Just become aware of what you're doing. Before you say that thing that you want to say, just stop and be like, am I really like this? Does this person, how are they going to take this? How are they going to handle it? How do they react every time I say stuff like this? All those things. I do feel like people should do some self-assessments, with their behaviors. Is everybody going to? No. I've become very aware, especially when people have like Gemini or Virgo. It's a lot of anxiety, a lot of overthinking, and a lot of stress that can come to them. So, you know, you just, again, the awareness of self of why do I do these things? And then what do I do about when I have the awareness, what do I do with it? So y'all, I know that I've come here to help people and talk them through their situations. I am fully aware of that, your life circumstances are the reason why you think and react the way that you do. Again, I'm aware of that, but what do we do with that information? What do we do with the knowledge of it? So, anyways, I wanted to, thank y'all for listening and hear me yap about stuff. I'm just trying to save the world with astrology and make people look at their charts and see this is why I act like this, okay? But I thank y'all so much. And of course, if you like an in-depth analysis of your actual birth chart or somebody else's birth chart, go ahead and hit me up, visit me on my website, send me a message on any platform. I'm everywhere, y'all. But I thank y'all so much, and I will talk to y'all soon. Bye.